members and participants, we are now live.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Committee of the Rules on Monday, November the 22nd of 2021. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, city council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote public may view and offer public testimony at the public hearings of council. Committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Enquirer, and Legal Intelligence prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilmember David O. Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members. I'm present.
Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
O'Neill here, sorry.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I am present.
And also in attendance, we have Councilmember Derek.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. I am present.
I also do want to acknowledge that Councilman David O., he did log on. He may be having technical difficulties, but he is present. Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Rules regarding bills numbers 210683, 210686, 210689, 210744, 210771, 210861, 210863, 210865, and 210869. Will the clerk please read the titles of the bills?
Bill number 210683, continuing Philadelphia Hospitality Improvement Levy District, a business improvement district encompassing certain existing and future hotel properties within the boundaries of the city of Philadelphia, and continuing the Philadelphia Hospitality Improvement Levy District Corporation to serve as the Neighborhood Improvement District Management Association for the district, approving a new plan for the district, including a list of proposed programs and services related to the development and promotion of the hotel and tourism industry in the city and county of Philadelphia, and their estimated costs, providing for special assessment fees to be levied on the eligible hotel properties within the district to fund such programs and services, authorizing the Director of Commerce on behalf of the city to execute an agreement with Phil DC relating to the district, and reauthorizing Phil DC to assess eligible property owners within the district and collect or cause to be collected special assessment fees to be used in accordance with the approved plan, all in accordance with provisions of the Community and Economic Improvement Act, and all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210686, to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Walnut Street, 9th Street, Locust Street, and 10th Street. Bill number 210869, amending section 14-525 of the Philadelphia Code entitled South 9th Street Market Overlay District to clarify existing provisions, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210863, to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Huntington Street, Howard Street, Susquehanna Avenue, American Street, Jefferson Street, and 6th Street. Bill number 210865, amending section 14-514 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Far Northeast Overlay District to prohibit eligibility for floor area height, and dwelling unit bonuses, and to increase minimum parking requirements, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210689 to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designation of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Old York Road, Broad Street, and 65th Avenue. Bill number 210771, authorizing the Water Commissioner on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement between the city and the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority for the PRA to act as the city's agent and incorporate Philadelphia Water Department identified green stormwater infrastructure projects in certain construction and improvement projects in and around the city on properties owned by the city, including with the prior written consent and approval of the district councilperson where the rebuild project is located. Those projects arising out of the city's Rebuilding Community Infrastructure or rebuild program, and on properties owned by the PRA from the design phase to construction completion in an efficient manner under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210861 to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain portions of land located within an area bounded by Burke Street, Memphis Street, Wilt Street, and Tulip Street, all under certain terms and conditions. And finally, 210744, a bill to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Germania Street, Arundel Avenue, Delaware Avenue, and Linden Avenue.
Thank you very much, Brett. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions, or comments they have or witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before we call the first panel, I want to acknowledge Councilmember Derek Green for remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also want to thank all the members of the Rules Committee for this indulgence to say a few remarks regarding Bill 210683. Now, I know there are other witnesses that will testify regarding this bill, but I want to provide just a little bit of context to the history of the bill and the reason why this bill is needed at this time. You know, back in 2016, the National Basketball Association wanted to bring the All-Star Game back to the city of Philadelphia because of the issues that occurred in North Carolina because of H.R. 2. And so the city really wanted to bring back this event. We had a phenomenal experience here in Philadelphia when we had the All-Star Game in our city, but we really did not have the resources to help attract that event to the city of Philadelphia. And so at that time, we looked at doing this Philadelphia Hospitality Improvement Levy, where the hotels around the city of Philadelphia was willing to add this additional fee on the hotel bill as a way of making sure that we could attract these type of large events to our city. And it's been variously successful in a lot of ways, from events as diverse as the Army-Navy game to my own fraternity when we had our national conclave here in Philadelphia in 2019. The Philadelphia Hospitality Improvement Levy has been beneficial for past events and future events. And I know my colleague, Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson, would like the fact that her organization, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, will be in Philadelphia in 2022. And this initiative will help to bring that convention to the city of Philadelphia. So it's been a phenomenal opportunity to bring events to our city and really help not just our center city core, but help people that live all around our city. Various people that live in neighborhoods across the city work in our hospitality community, and the Phil has been a way of helping to provide those jobs and maintain those jobs in our city. Now, when we had the pandemic, that decimated our hospitality industry. I'm a member of the board of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Also, I know Visit Philadelphia. Both those organizations received 70% of their dollars from the hotel tax. So they have been decimated. We've been trying to bring back events and conferences to our city, and having this increase will provide an opportunity for those organizations to do that when they had to make significant reductions in their budgets and their staffing, and really are being outgunned to their competitor cities and trying to bring these events and activities to our city to help the people in our neighborhoods who work in the hospitality sector. I think some of my colleagues have heard me talk about, last fall seeing I think it was a Ravens 49ers Monday Night Football game, and Baltimore was advertising in our market why citizens in the city of Philadelphia should go to Baltimore, the Inner Harbor, and spend dollars there. We need to be able to have the same ability to attract these conventions and activities to our city. We've invested a lot of dollars in our convention center and expansion of the convention center. We've been able to grow our hospitality sector in such a phenomenal way. So we need to make sure we have the resources to, as President Biden would say, build back better. We need to build back better our hospitality and convention industry in the city of Philadelphia. And this legislation will help to do that. Other witnesses will testify regarding other information regarding this bill. But I wanted to give council members a little context of why we got to where we are and where we need to going forward to make sure we have a robust hospitality industry that benefits not just Center City, not just the hotels and restaurants, but people that live throughout the city of Philadelphia. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Derek Green. I want to take a moment of personal privilege to acknowledge Councilwoman Cindy Bass in attendance, and as I mentioned before, Councilman David O. has signed in, and he has also returned to the rules hearing. Will the clerk please call the first panel for bill number 210683?
For Bill 210683, we have Michael Rashid, Ed Gross, and Greg Karin.
Good afternoon. You can just state your name and title for the record and proceed with your testimony. It's always good to see you, Michael. Welcome back.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Chairman and council members and others in attendance. My name is Michael Rashid, and I am here to speak about bill number 210683. The Commerce Department has enjoyed a long history of collaboration with the tourism and hospitality industries. In 2016, Commerce worked closely with the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association to create a tourism improvement district. That district was comprised of hotel properties, and it was indicated to generate funding so Philadelphia could compete for large events that bring out-of-town and overnight visitors. Since its creation, we have been pleased to support the Philadelphia Hospitality Improvement Levy, especially given the number of jobs that the hospitality industry generates for Philadelphians. There are 76,000 hospitality jobs in our city, and approximately 80% of all hotel jobs are filled by Philadelphia residents. As the Commerce Department reviews Bill number 210683 and considers its support, we have requested additional information. Some of the documents that we requested were provided last week, and we need time to review them. It is possible that upon our review, additional questions may arise. Until our questions are addressed, however, we will withhold our support of the bill. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the clerk please call the next witness.
Ed Gross.
Good morning, Chairman Johnson and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Ed Groves, and I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association and the President of the Philadelphia Hospitality Investment Levy, known in the hospitality industry as the PHIL. The PHIL is an organization consisting of every hotel in Philadelphia with more than 50 rooms. I am testifying in strong support of Bill number 210683, which will allow the PHIL board at their discretion to increase its room rate assessment fee from 0.75% up to 1.5%. On behalf of the entire Philadelphia hospitality industry, we would like to thank Councilman Green for both championing the original PHIL legislation as well as introducing this bill being heard today. No other industry in Philadelphia has been hurt more by the pandemic than its hotels and the hospitality industry. According to numbers from Tourism Economics, in 2019, our occupancy rate was 76.3% and fell to 30.9% in 2020, a 59.5% decrease. This resulted in a loss of hospitality jobs from 79,800 to 48,200, a 66% decrease. Of all the jobs lost in Philadelphia, 40.5% were hospitality jobs. Our business is slowly returning, thanks to the hard work of our partners at Visit Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Pennsylvania Convention Center Authority. This public health crisis has led these organizations to work together and with the hotel industry more effectively and collaboratively than ever. However, we are still facing significant challenges. Our room rates and occupancy have improved recently, but are nowhere near the levels we had in 2019, pre-pandemic. Meanwhile, new hotels have opened and our room inventory has increased by 45% in the last 10 years. Our partner organizations deliver exceptional value and results, and Philadelphia is going to need each of them to continue to execute their core mission to help fill our hotels to their maximum capacity. There are over 20,000 hotel rooms in Philadelphia, employing 15,000 people, 80% of whom are Philadelphia residents, living in every neighborhood of the city, and making an average living wage of over $44,000. Our employees look like Philadelphia, in part because we work with agencies such as Philadelphia OIC, Congreso de Latinos, Philadelphia Academies, and Philadelphia Works to ensure a diverse workforce from the frontline employees to upper management. These jobs are a part of the larger hospitality industry in the city, which employs a total of 80,000 jobs. Most of our entry-level jobs are in high demand amongst Philadelphia citizens, and all of these jobs are dependent upon outsiders choosing to visit and spend money in our great city. There is a core difference between the hospitality industry in Philadelphia and that of many of our peer cities. Comparable cities such as New York, Boston, Chicago, and Washington have a much larger segment of their hotel business that originates from corporations headquartered in those cities and the strong demand from corporate travel that they generate. In Philadelphia, we depend on a mix of convention, leisure, and corporate business to drive demand. But our corporate travel segment lags in comparison to that of our peer cities, meaning that we heavily rely on convention and group business to drive rate and hotel room revenues. In other cities, booking a large convention does not have a sizable impact on hotel performance. But here, it can mean a 10 to 15% increase in occupancy and more than 50% increase in room revenues, which is all the difference between a very good day and a very bad day. So it is critical for those 80,000 city hospitality jobs that we continue to have a convention center that is thriving and marketing campaigns both nationally and internationally that will attract new visitors to fill our hotel rooms. Prominent events like the NFL Draft, Made in America, the DNC Convention, and the Pope's visit are also part of the strategy of filling hotel rooms and restaurants to compensate for the lack of corporate travel. Since its creation 4 years ago, the PHIL has proven to be a critical component of these efforts. The PHIL was instrumental for the following events: the Army-Navy game, American Academy of Neurology, American Academy of Pediatrics, NEQ Volleyball, Biotech Innovations, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, American Academy of Family Physicians, and American Heart Association, amongst many others. Each filled rooms and helped our hotels keep their employees on payroll at a critical time. In addition, in the last year, the Phil also funded COVID sales relief to PHL CVB, Visit Philly's Hotel Package, PHL Cares Homeless Initiative, a Hospitality Workers Relief Program, and the World Cup Hosting Committee event. But there are over 160 funds nationally that are similar to the Phil, in cities as different from each other as Newark, Dallas, Memphis, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and Seattle, and 12 other states are considering creating similar tourism improvement districts as well. TID funds are being used nationwide to compete for larger conventions and events. Our fund is much smaller than those of most of our peer cities like San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New Orleans, and Dallas. The hotel industry is extremely price sensitive, so we always vigorously oppose any new taxes or fees imposed on our business. But the Phil is different because the hoteliers get to determine themselves if each potential funding recipient will have the desired return on investment and associated room nights. We have seen the results, and we have seen the results we hoped for from creating the Phil, but it's clear the funds it generates are not sufficient. Bill number 210-683 is needed to effectively continue our successful efforts of attracting citywide conventions and events for the benefit of all hotels, their employees, and thousands of other city businesses that also see impact from the visitor economy. Looking to future growth of Philadelphia hospitality industry, the Phil provides a dedicated source of funding that is critical for Philadelphia to remain competitive in the convention and events marketplace. For these reasons, the Hotel Association asks for your support for this legislation to keep Philadelphia competitive. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ed. Always good to see you. Well, always on the case, advocating for travel and tourism hotels in our city. I would like to ask for the clerk to please call the next witness on the panel.
Greg Karin.
Good morning, Chair Johnson, members of the Rules Committee. Good morning, Chairman. It's good to see you, sir. For the record, I'm Greg Karin, President and CEO of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I speak today in support of Council Bill 210-683, expanding the Philadelphia Hospitality Improvement Levy District. I provided some written testimony, but if it's okay with the chair's indulgence, I'd rather speak from the heart and from the gut. It's also not lost on me that I have three of my own board members on this call, and I want to give appreciation to Councilman O'Neill, Councilman Green, and Director Rashid for their engagement and support of our industry through their board work with us, and our sister organization, Councilman Squilla, who's been long involved with the Pennsylvania Convention Center Authority's board as well. As I think everybody knows, it's our role to fill the convention center, hotels, restaurants, attractions with large groups, all of which impacts jobs in the city, as has been referenced by Mr. Gross and by Councilman Green. The CVB has big plans to continue to attract more big events as we try to rebuild our tourism economy. The Phil is our only consistent mechanism to fund the necessary incentives to book many of these events. You've heard bits about this from my colleagues. Our ability to do so will absolutely be impacted by access to this funding. Created by the city itself as an alternative to the growing request to the city to provide financial support for these critical events, the Phil is a major component of how we're going to regain some of those 24,000 jobs lost since 2019. Hospitality represents 30 to 40% of all jobs lost in the last 2 years, and these events will bring back jobs and bring them back faster. There is an absolute correlation between the resources we've got and our ability to book business into the future. Again, the numbers are about 150 grants, I think, have been provided since the Phil was created back in 2018. And those grants were applied to events, some in the past, and go out to all the way to 2030. Those grants total almost $20 million. Again, some of it spent, some of it committed to the future. But this resource is a critical asset to the CVB and our team as our convention center, our airport, and our sales teams themselves. These funds are utilized to book a wide variety of events ranging from the major sporting events. As Ed mentioned, Army-Navy game, we just got a new RFP. We only have the Army-Navy game one more time. That's in 2022. And beyond that, it's an open field. Pardon the pun. The RFP is in hand. There will be heavy competition. And the financial support for an event like that is going to be critical And we know we've got more cities competing for the Army-Navy game, along with the World Cup, along with events like the All-Star game that we're going to host in 2026. As was also mentioned by Councilman Green, this is a critical area for us to attract the social and fraternal groups, the Divine Nines, that leverage and benefit our multicultural city by bringing in those organizations, not only to show what Philadelphia represents as a minority-majority city, but what we offer to those conventions themselves as a place where everybody can feel at home, regardless of what their background is and what their preferences are. The result of creating the Phil was that the city no longer had to invest in events. I know long before the Phil was created, there were constant requests to the city, and the city ponied up to the best of its ability to help attract these events. This was a city solution that I believe was actually opposed in its early days by the hotel community. But between the commerce director at the time, the mayor at the time, my predecessor at the Philadelphia CBB, there was indeed, as Councilman Green mentions, a collective and collaborative effort that says this was and is the most elegant solution, because it's not a tax. It's not something that's paid by the residents of the city. It's a penny's reinvestment of money paid by people who are visiting our city in the first place to reinvest some of that funds into the future. And as Ed Gross pointedly noted, these hotels are owned by investors. If they had the ability to raise their rates another $1 or $1.50 and make that part of their bottom line, they would absolutely do it. So it's not lost on me, or shouldn't be lost on anybody else, when they're willing to increase that burden by another point, whatever that decimal point is, as a reinvestment in their future and our future. The local economic impact on our city is about $2.5 billion. That's just from the events that have already been booked under the current Phil. And these are numbers that are not just created by the CBB or the city. It's an independent organization called Tourism Economics that assigns the multiples of what people spend when they're in our city spending money in an event. I'd like to focus, as Ed mentioned a minute ago, I'd like to focus on tourism improvement districts, or TIDs, as they're legally called, for just a minute on a national scale. TIDs have long existed in many cities across the country. Through the pandemic, dozens of destinations have scrambled to put these in place. I've got in my hands a 25-page report with almost 250 cities around the country, as Ed mentioned, that already have TIDs in place. Of the 200 plus cities with TIDs, I would note that Philadelphia and Billings, Montana are the only two locations in the country with a TID assessment of less than 1%. More specifically, if I look at the major markets, and I'll be a little bit more specific, 12 of those top 200 cities are as follows: Anaheim, 2%, LA, 1.5%, San Diego, 2%, Denver, 1%, New Orleans, 1.75%, Baltimore, just to our south, 2%, Boston, just agreed to this year, 1.5%, Philadelphia, 0.75%, Dallas, 2%, Fort Worth, 2%. The average of the major cities around the country comes out to 1.62% when you include Philadelphia. If you take us out of the mix, because we're dragging the average down, it's almost 1.7%. We have big plans for bookings and hosting these industry events and Army-Navy games and fraternal orders into the future. But we need this financial support. It is a critical tool in our toolkit to go out and go after this business. So the question is, will Philadelphia be able to compete with the other major markets for meetings, conventions, and special events? We lost a substantial amount of our funding that will take years to rebuild, so it can't come out of our budget. We're not going to be anywhere near where we were for at least 3 to 5 years as an industry. This will be the most critical element, and as I say, an elegant solution in reinvesting, in bringing more business in and bringing people back to work. I think that's all I've got to share, Chairman, and I'm happy to answer any questions, I'm sure, with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Before I turn it over to committee members for questions, I had just a couple brief questions. Greg, and it's good to see you, Greg, again on the case addressing what I think is one of the key economic engines here for the city of Philadelphia, and that's travel and tourism. Prior to the pandemic, I remember reading a magazine that ranked Philadelphia at a particular ranking as it relates to travel and tourism. What was the actual ranking number?
Chairman, you're testing me on something I'm not sure that I can provide the answer to without research myself. We know we're America's 6th largest city. We know that for years we were, not ashamed to say it, for many years the redheaded stepchild between New York and DC. And we climbed and crawled out of that a long time ago, thanks to the work of this city, this body, and my predecessors. And so what I will say anecdotally, Chairman, is that we are on that national landscape. We proudly boast the RNC, DNC, the Pope, and we're going to bring the FIFA World Cup across the finish line early next year, as we expect. We're up there with every other top tier city that's out there, and we've got the recognition of our industry. But it does take this financial support to get to those clients and to help close those deals.
Understood. Actually, according to U.S. News and World Report, Philadelphia was ranked #2 as one of the best places to visit in the United States, second only to New York. So just want to say that just for the ranking. That's according to U.S. News 2017 rankings. The city of Brotherly Love, one of the U.S. most visited cities with a rich historical heritage. I just want to acknowledge that because I'm one of the fans of recognizing that we're going to address the issue of poverty, right? And we're utilizing travel and tourism as a way to hire people that come from my district and also across the city of Philadelphia. A lot of my constituents work in the hotels. And so it's critically important that this industry has to thrive and move forward because it addresses, I would call, the black eye when it comes to the city of Philadelphia, and that's being the #1 big city when it comes to poverty in the country. And so I just want to state that for the record. And then also I just want to get clarity in regards to the administration's position on this bill. I know Michael Rashid said at this particular time the administration will be withholding their support, but also, if I understood correctly, Commerce has a seat at the table with Councilman Derek Green, O'Neill, and Squiller. So have there been any collaboration or talk around this particular legislation prior to coming to the hearing? Just want to know for my own edification.
Councilman, yes, there have been discussions, and as I indicated, first of all, from the very beginning, Commerce Department and the administration has been extremely supportive of the idea of the creation of this district and what you've heard in terms of what its mission and goals are. Our discussions have been, we raised some questions about certain areas. Some were financial, some were not. And just last week, were we able to get an answer, late last week, where we were able to get responses to those questions. We need to review the answers, and we have not had time to review the answers sufficiently. And as part of our review from our financial people, we would like to engage with the management of the Phil, and because we don't want to come up with conclusions unilaterally, we need to engage with the management of the Phil and the board if necessary, and get some clarity around our questions, answers to our questions, and the data that was submitted. So based on that, we don't want to rush to judgment. We all for the Phil and everything that people are saying. We are not trying to abolish the Phil, and no way are we trying to do that. We have some questions, and we don't want to just rush to support the bill when we can take a few days or weeks or whatever it takes and get the answers. This is a long-term decision, long-term commitment, and I think we should be judicious and get answers to our questions before we rush to a yay vote or a supportive vote.
Okay. Thank you very much for your clarification. Any other questions and comments from members of the committee? Councilman Maria Carmen Sanchez.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to thank Councilmember Green for this legislation. I think it's really important, particularly we all know that the hospitality and tourism industry was really decimated by the onset of COVID-19. So I wanted to thank him for this legislation, particularly because I had worked on bill number 120955 as a legislative aide, which also assisted the hospitality and tourism industry. And Greg, I wanted to thank you for mentioning the Divine Nine in your remarks remarks. And I wanted to utilize this opportunity to acknowledge the work also of Visit Philly with their recent marketing and tourism campaign, specifically around the Divine Nine. And my colleague and member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Councilmember Green, talked about their convention that was here, and also mentioned the convention of my sorority, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, which will be here in July. But I also wanted to mention and thank you all for the work because Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated will be here at the end of March, beginning of April for their regional conference. So we know that this works and that it helps to attract needed conventions to our city. And I look forward to working with all of those groups as we anticipate their arrival to the city. Just quickly for the record, Mr. Chair, I wanted to go back to Commerce Director Rashid and just ask if he could detail specifically which questions they were looking for responses to from the officials they're working with.
Yes, Councilwoman. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
In our letter, we asked for an accounting of all revenue and expenditures for each fiscal year of the field's existence. We asked for statements of fund balances from IRS Form 990 for each fiscal year of the field's existence. We asked for policies and procedures for procurement of management services. We asked for copies of any RFPs issued for management services, as well as copies of responses to those RFPs. And we asked it for a list of all known, encumbered, or anticipated expenses for the next 5 years. Again, some of those documents were provided, some were not, but even in the case of the ones that were provided, we need to do some analysis of the answers that were provided. And just like in any financial analysis, assumptions have been made, and we need to have some discussions around the assumptions so we can determine whether those are the best and most adequate assumptions that can be made, that should be made over the financial analysis. So we have to have some discussions.
Okay, well, thank you for that response, Director Rashid. And I was just quickly writing down those questions. I will be in support of this legislation, provided that those documents will be provided as requested to the Commerce Director. And I know that we all will continue to work together to ensure that we can help benefit the hospitality and tourism industry in our city. So I am in support of this legislation and will be in support of this bill out of committee today, but just ask that those documents be submitted as requested. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Captain Gilmore Richardson. Councilman Maria Kiona Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. One, a clarifying question. I thought when we first legislated this, and again, I also want to echo my support for how important the hospitality industry. Were there not annual requirement reporting requirements, Councilmember Green, as part of this legislation? It just seems that the basic level of information that the administration is asking is something that they should be receiving annually. Is that not required in the legislation?
If I may answer that question, Councilwoman?
Yes, Ed.
Yes, thank you. We do submit an annual report. Our fund is audited every year by a third-party auditor, and we share those reports. We are very careful to make sure that the fund is managed in a very fiscal responsible manner. We exceed all GAAP, we exceed all GAAP requirements, and we do issue the 990 to all board members. We do issue our annual report to all board members and to anyone who would like to see them. Our 990 is public information on the internet for anyone who wants to see it. So yes, those requirements are we're part of the authorization, and they have been fulfilled each year.
Okay. While I have you, Ed, what are your minority participation numbers? One of the issues that I had expressed very early on, that this group, by the composition of the board, was heavily white and heavily white men. Where are you as it relates to diversity, as it relates to your operations?
We are much better as far as diversity at the top level. However, nowhere near where it needs to be.
What does that mean? What
Well, and this is what I know. This was a very similar answer I've given in the past. Anything that's controlled locally, and that includes hiring of upper level management in our hotels. We have been we have met a lot of our, we have met diversity requirements, but where we don't control as much are the general manager position in our hotels. And that's a fluid, fluid depending on who, there's a lot of turnover in our industry. So general managers come and go. Just recently with the pandemic and there's been a huge amount of turnover, but the hotel companies themselves need to do a much better job at the top level. And we, one thing that we have supported, and I'd like Greg Karen to discuss this further. There has been a diversity and inclusion association that one of Greg's executives is serving as the executive director for. So we have, on a local level, we have led the charge on that. Greg, would you like to elaborate on Greg DeShield's position?
Sure. Look, as I mentioned before, there's no question about the great diversity of our city and what it means, not just for us as locals, but it means nationally to attract events here. Organizations that are booking major cities want to know that the initiatives of diversity, equity, and inclusion and a host of other social issues are being dealt with locally. I'm proud of the organization. I can't take any credit, but the three predecessors ago, Tom Muldoon in a very early stage created what is called PHL Diversity, which is a subset of the CVB itself, and really has had national acclaim in terms of what we do locally and what we do on a national scale. Through that, we've actually partnered and helped create a national organization called Tourism Diversity Matters. It was actually founded by another former employee of the CVB, a gentleman named Mike Gamble, who worked at the Bureau many, many years ago and has a search firm now, but also saw the importance as we dealt with all the issues of George Floyd and major news events of the last year. And he recognized that the hospitality industry itself needed to do a better job on a national scale. So he turned to his roots and he turned to Philadelphia. And we became one of the founding partners and charter sponsors of this national organization, where we actually have Greg DeShields, who is a key participant in that. I sit on the board of it. But I sit on the board next to the executives from Marriott Hotels and Airlines and some of the biggest national players. And they see Philadelphia as the model and as the case study. And we actually are trying to help promulgate that around the country, not just in our own self-interest, but in the national interest as well.
Well, I appreciate that. I, personally know Greg and have worked with him. This is a matter of you're asking a city council to give you a tax vote, right? For us to tax constituents. I take that matter very, very, very seriously. From the beginning with this tax, one of the questions, and I want to get to Michael Rashid, was, we have several different taxes for the hospitality industry, all very necessary. We all want to support the industry. So to the director, Michael Rashid, one of the questions that I asked in the beginning of this is, how are we aligning the various taxes and the various organizations, right, to ensure that we have a common theme and messaging around promoting the city. And I think there was a commitment from this board and from members that we would make sure that the hotel tax did not become an isolated, but really more coordinated with the convention center, the visitors bureau. So, Commerce Director, you tell me how we are, given COVID and the necessity, how we are aligning all of these different taxes that we have authorized for the utilization of this industry.
Well, I think that's a great question, Councilwoman. I think from a discussion and a strategic alignment and degree of collaboration, there is a lot between the Convention and Visitors Bureau and Phil and Visit Philly in terms of what your specific question around our tax policy and financial alignment. That's a great question. I cannot answer it at this point, but we will try to get you an answer on that.
Yeah, I think it's important, again, as we look at, again, investments. I consider all this work, again, a tax vote is a serious vote. I consider the investments in this being hugely important, and how we manage this money is hugely important. I'm very much concerned about, you know, the spend, and while we can't control general managers, we can definitely control the spend and the investments. And I just want to see all of these agencies that ask us for these tax votes looking at this very seriously, just beyond the one-off conventions. And again, all of those things are important, but how they actually spend the money and invest it is hugely important. I'd like to see, you know, us get to some sort of agreement on this, because I do think we need to move forward. We have a recovery, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage as much as possible. But I also think, you know, we have to meet some threshold guidelines around some of this data. So, you know, like Catherine Gilmore, I'd like to be supportive, but I also want to make sure that the administration, who we ultimately hold accountable when we give them this kind of vote, that this data sets and what they need has been reviewed. So, Ed, you know, if you guys have been supporting this on an annual basis, is this a case of this not being reviewed and meeting? So you're submitting documents, and there isn't periodic meetings with the administration about your activities?
We have bi-monthly meetings, and we share everything. You know, we share our financial information. We share our 990. We go above and beyond to be as transparent as possible. You know, I also think it's worth noting that this is nothing that we're excited for. This is an effort that we're trying to solve our own problems. We're not coming to the city with our handout. We're rather trying to come up with our own solution of solving our own problem. And you know, if you look at the PHLCVB's funding, it's really a big concern of ours. And I can tell you, in early conversations with this, I was very, you know, Greg Karen can attest, I was not happy about having to come back and do this. But again, I don't see any other way. I just, you know, our industry is important. It's important to me that we succeed. And that's why I've come around to, you know, to asking for us to have the ability to do this.
Well, I appreciate your sincerity on that, but, you know, I will tell you that there's 17 of us taking a tax vote. It's not you, it's us, right?
Absolutely.
This is a tax vote. And so I take that, you know, that issue very, very seriously. Again, the industry is hugely important, and we need the recovery. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the latitude.
No, thank you very much, Councilwoman Sanchez. I just had a question for Michael Rashid.
Yes, sir.
And I guess it's for Greg and Ed as well. So from my understanding, so the thought would be prior to final passage of the bill, which is roughly 3 weeks from now, with Ed, Michael, and Greg, y'all are still in conversations about getting the administration the data, correct, for this bill?
Yes.
Is that correct, Michael?
Yes. Well, you know, we're open. We're open 24/7.
You're saying open, which is I understand. Are y'all consistently talking to one another?
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah. Yes. As recently.
I guess the point I'm getting at is the administration not supporting the bill based upon your position today. This gets voted out of committee. It goes to the floor. If the administration, if there's no compromise between the administration, Ed and Greg, then obviously there's going to be a question regarding does the administration pass the bill if it comes out of council?
Well, when I say we're open to continue to talk, we talked over the weekend, yesterday.
Okay.
In the middle of the Eagles game, we're talking yesterday.
Okay. I was just making sure.
We'll continue to talk.
Going back and forth and kind of foretelling, you know, the final passage of it. And I know what Councilman Derek Green in the midst of this, because this is who Bill it is, he's doing his due diligence. And so I feel comfortable regarding the process. But I just wanted to ask the question. So
I am confident. I am confident that we can work it out, especially if I didn't know the time frame. If you're saying 3 weeks, we got 3 weeks. I'm confident we can do it in 3 weeks.
45 days is what I thought, is what I'm under the impression. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. My lobbyist is telling me is good.
Okay. Well, that's great. At least we're in the dialogue, moving the process forward. And if there are no other questions from members of the committee, Councilman Derek Green.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I commit to trying to pull together that conversation. I have been in conversations throughout the weekend over the past number of days regarding this legislation. I think it's just a getting to a meeting of the minds between the information that was provided by Ed Gross and others and the information received by the Commerce Department. Is getting to the meeting of minds of how those dollars are calculated regarding grants that have been committed versus fund balance. I think it's just a matter of getting on the same page in that information. I do want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Maria Quino Sanchez. We both serve on a tax reform working group, and she made a reference to a tax vote, which I, like her, take very important. I also just want to let members of this committee know, and I have a question for either Ed or Greg, that my understanding is that the vast majority of those who pay this increased fee are not necessarily citizens of the city of Philadelphia. And that was part of the reason why this was put together. How can we leverage the dollars coming into the city of Philadelphia to help those that live in the city of Philadelphia at these locations where they work? Or may benefit from this. So can you add a little perspective to that?
Sure, absolutely. Can I start, Greg, and I'll turn it over to you? I mean,
yes, sir.
When we started this, when this was, first off, I want to say this was assigned to me. This was, I was put in charge of this. I did not want to collect the money. I did not want to, but we have been very successful at making this all work. And one of the requirements was that every dollar we spend, we wanted at least $8 in incremental hotel revenue to come back. We have blown that out of the water. For every dollar we spend, we're seeing north of $60 in incremental hotel room night revenue come back to us. And that means jobs. That means jobs for Philadelphians. That means jobs for hotel employees. That means jobs for restaurant employees, Uber drivers, taxi cab drivers, anyone who benefits from visitors. We also have been very strict on that. This is not a slush fund. This is money that is intended to fill hotel rooms. Hotels are taxed at 15.5%. So when you see economic impact statements, a large part of that is because these events sell hotel rooms. We have angered some people by turning away who wanted some of this money for things that did not impact our industry and did not fill room nights. So, this has been it's been a very interesting last 4 years, but it's also been very rewarding. It's very rewarding in that we've held our ground, and this fund has employed an awful lot of Philadelphians, and I still have a list of quotes from people who said this fund would never make it. So, I mean, I'm very proud of what we've done. I'm very proud when I walk the hotels, when I walk through hotels during conventions, and I see a lot of people working. One of my favorite moments in the last couple years prior to the pandemic was when I introduced Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson to a couple of hotel employees, and I asked them if they were happy in their jobs, and they just, for a good 15 minutes told her how great it was to work in a Philadelphia hotel. I had no idea what they were going to say, and thankfully they were happy employees. So, that's it. I'll let Craig continue.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Mr. Chairman, again for the time. To be clear, it is not a tax by legal standard or by implication on the local community. It is money that is added onto a hotel bill and paid by out-of-town visitors as part of their hotel bill that is then taken and reinvested to help generate more out-of-town visitors. It's that simple. I also want to point out that the hospitality industry and tourism is a key part of our broader economic development strategy for the city. It's proven that whenever we bring a national convention here or a trade show, we're bringing in corporation representatives that can look at the city of Philadelphia as a place for them to do business, to relocate their headquarters, to set up a regional office. And it is a part of the city's economic development strategy that the more we can expose what a great city we've got and how far we've come in the past 2 decades, that the implications of attracting people to live, work, and play here and companies to invest here are all residual effects of tourists and conventions coming in. I also want to point out that the mechanics are already in place, right? This is already something that was agreed to. And as Ed pointed out, it's really been proven by third party after third party that the methodology works. The accountability is there. We have a very strict, we as the Bureau typically put in the application to the board. The board is made up predominantly of the hotel industry, and they want to make sure that that return on investment is there. The city does have a seat at the table through the Commerce Director and through an ex officio seat by Councilman Green. So the mechanics are there. What all we're looking to do, as I pointed out, and I'm happy to share this 25-page study, is level up. We were already investing at a much lesser rate than our peers. And now that there are more cities getting TIDs in place, and all of them at, most of them at double to higher what we're actually collecting, when you layer that together with the lack of hotel taxes that we've got to invest from a sales and marketing perspective, it could be the most critical element. We've got a lot of asks on the horizon of the fill, and they're going to be larger and further reaching than before. And I hate to make it that simple, but in some of these cases, with a fill grant, we will close and book an event into the future, and without it, we may not.
Thank you very much. I'm going to.
Mr. Chair, I just one last point. I just want to ask, and who are the members of the board of the fill? Just want to make sure I have that.
We have our members set up. Since every hotel pays into this fund, when we set this up, we wanted to make sure that every geographic area of the city was represented based on number of hotel rooms that they have in their area. So, for example, we have the four what are considered convention hotels have automatic seats on our board. We have several other center city hotels represented on our board. We have the airport area, the City Line Avenue, and Northeast Philadelphia have representation on this board. And occasionally we do come across an application. We want to make sure that every hotel that pays into this, which is, by the way, any hotel with 50 rooms or more that's located within Philadelphia city limits, we want to make sure that everyone benefits from this fund. And, I think we've done a great job of doing that.
And lastly, outside of general managers, who else serves on the fill board?
I'm sorry. We have ex officio members such as yourself. Michael Rashid is a voting member. Visit Philly is an ex officio member. The Pennsylvania Convention Authority, myself, PHLCVB, and then Philadelphia OIC also is an ex officio member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Catherine Gilmore Richardson, City Councilwoman, do you have a last comment?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to go back and just say thank you for all the responses that we received. And as I stated, I will be supporting this legislation. To Councilmember Sanchez's point, though, I wanted to offer an idea that could possibly be helpful as we move forward in this process, knowing that we don't have a council session this Thursday because of Thanksgiving, so we reconvene again in December. Maybe there's some type of MOU or something that could be put together with the Phil and the administration regarding, just putting it in writing, because as my former boss used to say, Blondell Reynolds Brown, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So maybe there's some type of MOU we could put together just to state what the, technical reporting requirements will be with the administration year over year. The documents, most of the list that I made here based on my earlier questions to Director Rashid are either available publicly or some have been sent. So we just want to make sure that we all know which documents, the administration should receive every year so that everybody has the information they need in order to make decisions. So I will be supporting this legislation and just ask, and I know with Councilman Green involved, you all will do this work, that you all have some type of agreement with the administration regarding the documents that have been requested. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you all for your testimony. Will the clerk please call up the next panel for bill number 210686?
Chairman, could I interrupt? This is Councilman David O.
Councilman David O is recognized.
Thank you very much. I do have a prior commitment regarding city council business, so I'll ask if I may be excused and be recorded as voting yes on all bills.
Thank you very much, Councilman David O.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
For
Will
Bill,
the clerk please call the panel for bill number 210686?
for 210686, we have Paula Brumlow Burns.
Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. I am Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210686, which was introduced into City Council on September 17th, 2021 by Councilmember Squilla. The purpose of this bill is to allow for the construction of a new biomedical research building at Thomas Jefferson University to replace an existing above-ground parking structure. Bill number 210686 remaps a parcel of land along 9th Street between Walnut Street and Locust Street from RMX3 residential mixed use to CMX4 commercial mixed use. The bill aligns with a Philadelphia 2035 citywide vision recommendation to encourage institutional development and expansion through policy and careful consideration of land resources. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210686 at its meeting of October 21st, 2021 and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. And you have any questions for members of the committee? Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if there was anyone from Jefferson here regarding this project.
Sure, if I may speak, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Mr. Ron Patterson from the 2nd Councilmanic District.
My councilman.
How are you?
I'm well. Good morning. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. If I may, just by brief summary, you did hold a hearing on this bill on October 26th, and we were still working on the EOP plan, which we have and which we have submitted to be attached to the bill. So with that said, Councilwoman Tony Bracali is here with Jefferson, and we can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Patterson. I just, again, for the record, am really happy that Jefferson is moving forward with a new biomedical research building here in the city of Philadelphia, right? Because we know a number of folks are locating those biomedical research facilities outside of our city. So I want to give you kudos for that. The only question that I wanted to register for the record, particularly because I am a member of the Rules Committee, is how you all are working with the School District of Philadelphia as you're planning for this building to ensure that young people in our city will have an opportunity to work at this facility. And I just wanted to register that for the record because this is the only opportunity I'll have to talk about this while it's still in committee. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Councilwoman. Tony, would you like to respond?
Yeah, Ms. Richardson, thank you for that question. It's an important one. Obviously, I think for many of us who live in the city, it's something we're concerned about for all the reasons you know. I will find out, and I can report back, maybe if the chair and Mr. Patterson would let me know how I could report back. I can get back to you and let you know what our initiatives around those have been. I think everyone is probably aware that as an institution, Jefferson takes our responsibilities to our community and kind of adjacent properties and everything very seriously, and also to the city. But let me offer back to the group if it's okay at a later point some specifics for you, and I can coordinate with Ron on the best way for us to provide that.
Or we can provide with you directly, either by email or meet with you in person, whatever you prefer.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that. Yes.
Okay, great. That'll be excellent. And like I said, I'm in support of this legislation out of committee, particularly because we don't have a council session on Thursday, so we do have time to pull together a meeting. But it's very important to me as we move forward with approving projects like this, that we also have a plan in place at the onset of the project to ensure that young people in our city have the opportunity to work at these facilities. So I look forward to working with you. We can pull in the School District of of Philadelphia and their Office of Career and Technical Education, because right now there's only about 2 or 3 CTE programs that align with biomedical research, one being at the High School for Engineering and Science and the other at Roxborough High School. So we have to ensure, if we're serious about it, making sure our city is preparing our workforce for the opportunities that we know lie ahead in our labor market indicators, because I know you all were looking at the labor market indicators when you decided to put this facility here, that we are connecting our young people with these opportunities. So I will be in support of the legislation out of committee, provided that we will have an opportunity to meet before this bill comes up for a final vote. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chair. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Any other questions and comments from members of the committee? Okay, hearing none. And Tony, give a shout out to Hugh Levy for me and Councilman Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210869?
For 210869, we have Paula Brumlow Burns.
I'm sorry, I'm out of order, so let me get that one. Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. I am Paula Brumlow Burns, City Planner with the legislative team of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on bill number 210869, which was introduced into City Council on October 28, 2021 by Councilmember Squilla. Bill number 210869 will amend Chapter 14-500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Overlay Zoning Districts by revising certain provisions of Section 14-525 entitled SNM South 9th Street Market District, all under certain terms and conditions. This bill will clarify language in the overlay to explicitly prohibit vehicular ingress and egress to and from 9th Street between Catherine and Federal Streets. The intent of the overlay is to preserve the walkable character of the Italian market. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210869 at its meeting of November 18, 2021, and recommended it for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions and comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210865?
Mr. Chair, I believe the next one to be called is 210863, and that would also be Paula Brumlow Burns.
I jumped that. Okay, excuse me. 210863.
I am Paula Brumlow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210863, which was introduced into City Council on October 28, 2021 by Councilmember Quinones Sanchez. Bill number 210863 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Huntington Street, Howard Street, Susquehanna Avenue, American Street, Jefferson Street, and 6th Street. The 7th Council District has been working with several nonprofit housing organizations to assist with construction of affordable housing units in the district. Under the proposal, the Hispanic Association of Contractors and Enterprises, the Association Puerto Ricanas and Marcha, and the Esperanza and Norris Square Community Alliance will receive vacant lots from both the Philadelphia Housing Authority and the Philadelphia Land Bank to build scattered affordable housing units. To allow the applicants to avoid seeking variances while providing affordable housing within the community, this bill will rezone the blocks containing the approximately 300 scattered lots from RSA 5 residential single family to RM1 residential multifamily. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210863 at its meeting of November 18, 2021 and recommended approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
The chair recognizes Councilman Maria Quinones Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission. This is a correction to a correction as we really try to help expedite and facilitate the affordable housing development that is going on in the South Kensington area, especially given the gentrification. So I want to thank the Planning Commission. We've worked with many private as well as our public developers on this, and ask all my council colleagues for their support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions and comments from members of the committee? Hearing none. Will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210689?
Mr. Chair, the next one is actually 210865, and that is Paula Brumble-Burns as well.
Paula, you can begin your testimony.
I'm Paula Brumbelow-Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on Bill number 210865, which was introduced into City Council on October 28, 2021 by Councilmember O'Neill. Bill number 210865 amends the FNE, Far Northeast Overlay District, to prohibit eligibility for floor area, height, and dwelling unit bonuses and to increase minimum parking requirements, all under certain terms and conditions. The FNE overlay is coterminous with the 10th Council District. The proposed bill is intended to limit the scale and density and require more parking for by right development in multifamily residential CMX1 and CMX2 zoning districts. Such zoning districts are located primarily in the Fox Chase Town Center and the Castor and Bustleton Avenue commercial corridors. This bill may reduce the ability to construct new by right housing in part of the city where demand is growing. The prohibition of bonuses will hinder citywide initiatives to manage stormwater and support housing programs. The proposed one parking space per 1 unit ratio does not support walkable commercial corridors. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210865 at its meeting of November 18, 2021 and recommended not for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210689?
For 210689, we have Paula Brumbelow-Burns.
I'm still Paula Brumbelow-Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on Bill number 210689, which was introduced into City Council on September 16, 2021 by Councilmember Bess. Bill number 210689 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Old York Road, Broad Street, and 65th Avenue. The purpose of this zoning bill is to facilitate redevelopment of this vacant lot with a 7-story mixed-use building, including 65 dwelling units, retail sales, restaurant and office uses, and 49 parking spaces. While the City Planning Commission agrees that redevelopment of the site is a worthy goal, the building height and range of uses that would be permitted by the proposed CMX3 zoning district are inappropriate for the surrounding neighborhood. The Upper North District Plan recommended no change to the existing CMX 2.5 zoning of this site. The plan encourages neighborhoods serving commercial uses and housing, with a 55-foot height limit. The CMX3 zoning district proposed in Bill number 210689 has no height limit and allows a wide range of uses, including hotels, takeout restaurants, group medical practitioners, and group homes, none of which are permitted as a matter of right in the existing CMX 2.5 zoning district. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 210689 at its meeting of September 16, 2021, and recommended that the bill not be approved. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman Cindy Baz.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of my colleagues for being here today and for taking this bill under consideration. But, I want to ask for your support, but first, I really want to just add, Paula, I thank you for all of the work that you've done over the years and, have been a constant. But I do want to point out that the language that was just used by Ms. Burns in terms of what the proposed uses could be. They really ring very strongly with me because it seems as if it is an attempt to point out things which are never intended for the site, such as group homes and takeout restaurants, which we know in many communities is a real red herring. So, I just really wanted to point out that language was, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but quite inflammatory in terms of what is being suggested by the Planning Commission. This is a development that has been waiting for a very long time. The residents deserve better. The owner of the land and the property deserves better. We all deserve better, as this is the entry point into the city of Philadelphia. And what you see as you enter off of Old York Road right now onto Broad Street is basically a big hole in the ground. And this is going to really move and propel this entire community forward with a project that is going to be appropriate, that has included community input, and that is going to be something that we can all stand by, support, and be proud of. And so I look forward to working with Ms. Brumbelow Burns on other projects that are problematic in our community, but I can assure my colleagues that this is not one of them. This is an actual sit-down restaurant in the community that many of us have actually had the opportunity, the previous location, many of us have been to what was then the Oak Lane Diner. The idea is to bring back the Oak Lane Diner and to also offer some additional options. And again, this is a decision that will be made by the community. There will be no takeout restaurant. There will be no group home at this facility. This is going to be, again, the Oak Lane Diner and the potential for some senior housing, which is desperately needed in the city of Philadelphia. So I just want to ask for all of my colleagues to support what we're trying to do here, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilman Cindy Bass. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Kathleen Gilmore Richardson.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to thank the bill sponsor, Councilmember Bass, for all of her work with the community, and just highlight, as she stated, the land in its current condition. It is an eyesore, particularly as one of the first things you see when you enter the city of Philadelphia. So I just wanted to commend her and thank her for working very diligently, not only with the community, but with all parties involved to ensure that we could have a project at the top of Broad Street that is befitting of that community. So I will be in support of this legislation. Formerly patronized the Oak Lane Diner as a child. That was a mainstay for us to go to after church. So we're looking forward to ensure that this site will live up to its beauty and its potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Kathleen Gilmore Richardson. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210771.
For 210771, we have Mark Camarada.
Good morning, Chairmember Johnson and members of the Committee on Rules. I am Mark Camarada, Deputy Commissioner for Planning and Environmental Services with the Philadelphia Water Department. And joined with me today are my colleagues Jessica Brooks and Elizabeth Svekla. I'm here today to testify in support of Bill number 210771, introduced by Councilmember Parker on behalf of Council President Clark, authorizing the Water Commissioner on behalf of the city to enter into an agreement between the city and the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority, PRA, for the PRA to act as the city's agent to include and incorporate Philadelphia Water Department identified green stormwater infrastructure projects in certain construction and improvement projects. These projects would be in and around the city on properties owned by the city, including with the prior written consent and approval of the district council person where the rebuild project is located, those projects arising out of the city's Rebuilding Community Infrastructure or rebuild program. Also included would be properties owned by the PRA from the design phase to construction completion in an efficient manner under certain terms and conditions. PWD, Philadelphia Water Department, and Rebuild have been working closely to maximize the stormwater management on rebuild sites. This agreement between the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority and the Philadelphia Water Department is necessary for the Philadelphia Water Department to provide funding for additional stormwater management that is incorporated seamlessly into the overall site design. The Philadelphia Water Department, Rebuild, and the District Council person would collaborate to provide high-quality projects that achieve multiple city objectives. The Philadelphia Water Department respectfully requests that this bill be reported favorably out of this committee and that the rules of council be suspended to allow for first reading of this bill at the next session of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well as my colleagues.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments of members of the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Kathleen Gilmore Richardson.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I apologize, Mr. Mark. I missed a quick portion of your testimony. But at any rate, I wanted to just register for the record if someone could quickly talk about, as we're thinking about stormwater management with the water department, your readiness around the infrastructure package that was recently passed. I know there will be some opportunities around stormwater management and additional infrastructure projects for the city. It's our understanding that those projects will be mostly competitive and not sort of given out on a formula base, which is typically they're all given out formula base for the city. So could you just talk about PWD's readiness around stormwater management and competing for those dollars?
Absolutely. Jessica, would you like to, can I pass to my colleague Jessica Brooks here, can maybe talk about our green infrastructure queue and how we feed our capital budget and how that connects to kind of our long-term initiatives and compliance obligations?
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of our projects are competitively bid public projects, and we have approximately, I would say, about $60 to $70 million worth of projects in our queue right now that are scheduled to be bid over the coming year. We are examining that queue of projects to look to see which of those would be most appropriate to be rescheduled for additional infrastructure funding, should that be available to us, and working closely with the rest of our capital budget team to kind of schedule those out and make sure that we are using the most appropriate funding for those. But all of those projects are intended to be public bids.
Okay. Okay. So I hear you. My question is specifically around our readiness for this infrastructure project. And I know you probably have projects in the pipeline, which is great, right? Because we have to be ready. But I specifically wanted to talk about how you all are thinking about some of the existing programs and working with our state partners. And I'll use this as an example, the Safe Drinking Water Act, those type of projects that will come down the pipeline. How are you all working with the state officials and others to ensure that we're ready for this infrastructure package?
We've been following, I guess, the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, where the Water Department is serving on a working group and a committee that was established out of the Managing Director's office led by Chris Parhalski. We meet frequently with members of Penvest, who's the state revolving fund, who has been the recipient of a lot of federal funds and will continue to be. And we anticipate that a lot of new federal money will be channeled through these drinking water and clean water revolving funds. We have submitted a few applications for green infrastructure to state revolving funds and have been awarded some funds previously. And we're hoping that we continue to do so moving forward. So our kind of, approach here is to queue up projects, have them at the ready, and then figure out where the money ends up and try to put together competitive applications in which to receive that money. So, again, our philosophy is to make sure we have quality, solid projects designed and ready for construction and done in kind of close collaboration with city partners, whether that's on public property, lands, or with Parks and Rec, or with streets, you name it. That's to have kind of projects in the queue, designed and ready to go for hopefully when that money comes flowing, whatever channel in which it comes to the city.
Excellent. Well, we really enjoy working with you all in my office. I know my team members enjoy working with you. I thank you for your work. Just because we're talking about stormwater management and PWD, I had to register for the record, the opportunities that we know will come around drinking water with this infrastructure package. There'll be grants for, public water systems to assist us in connecting households to clean public water. We know some folks are not in our system as of yet in some of the older parts of our communities, and we deal with bills like that all the time. But also there will be an EPA grant program that will assist cities like Philadelphia to increase our resiliency around natural hazards, cybersecurity, and all the extreme weather events we've been having in the city of Philadelphia. So I just wanted to register that, ask that you all are, prepared for that, and I look forward to working together with you on all the work that we're going to do over the next couple of years. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question that was made me, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson made me think of it when she talked about the infrastructure bill, one of those once in a lifetime opportunities possibly, and stormwater. And that is that, I'm going to try to keep this description make it as brief as possible, but the city started building separate systems back, I think, in the 40s. So it's somewhere around 80 years ago. And roughly 60% of the city is still I'm looking for what's the terminology, Mark?
Combined
systems, which means that all the stormwater goes in with the sewage and goes to the treatment plant in a separate system, which my district is all just entirely separate. The stormwater has a separate route to the river and creeks and everything else, and to go out to the natural course of events. But many cities across the country, and for all different reasons, this is not to disparage the water department at all, but have made progress over the years in turning combined systems into separate systems. Some cities more than others, and we always were in the bottom of that. We pretty much, our combined systems that we had in the 40s are still just about all around. And I just want to know, just out of curiosity, is there anything in this infrastructure bill that might help us convert combined to separate, not the whole city, but the pieces that are maybe the easiest or the least, less expensive conversions? Is this an opportunity there? I don't want to turn this into an environmental stormwater hearing, but it is something that when it comes up, it makes you start thinking about other things that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember. It is a great question. We get asked it very often. Sewer separation is the term used here of how do we take these combined systems and how do we lay new infrastructure where we collect stormwater and sanitary in two different pipes. There is a time and a place for that effort. The scale typically is small, though, in which you do it. It's not really a tool to use at scale, only because the complexity of then disconnecting every single connection point to that existing sewer. So every house, every industry, any connection that is currently connected to a combined sewer then needs to be separated as well, usually up to that, the point of collection, whether that's at the house or at the base of that industry or building. In addition to that, most plumbing, or you see a lot of plumbing, interior plumbing is still combined. So even if you had separate sewers, in the street, on the property leading up to the building, the premise plumbing, a fair amount of times is combined as well. So you're already mixed on site. So you're talking about replacement of the public infrastructure, the lateral infrastructure, and then the building infrastructure. It is usually extremely cost prohibitive to do that at scale. But there are ways and there may be locations in which that could happen. But and again, it's not just the couple blocks in which you would do that. You have to follow that pipe all the way down to where it ultimately is draining. So it can't just be a neighborhood. It has to be then where it drains further down in the system and that system further down. So you're talking, about the combined system being thousands of miles of pipes and then thousands of miles of laterals and then premise plumbing. The scale is crazy in our city just based on how we were constructed, many, many decades ago. But for new development moving forward, there's ways for us to think about, separation of that infrastructure. I hope that helps, answer the question.
Well, my question was fairly simple. Does the infrastructure bill offer any opportunities to do more of this?
Mr. Chair, a point of personal privilege to respond to our colleague, Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember O'Neill, the reason why I brought this up is because I do think it's a ripe opportunity for us to help our constituents that need to be connected. And this package, from what we understand from a briefing we had with Congressmember Evans on Friday around drinking water, would authorize grants to public water systems to assist in connecting households to clean public water through installation of filtration systems and also lead line removal, which is likely in some of those older areas. And the non-federal cost match is only going to be 10% for that portion of the program, but also around drinking water infrastructure resiliency. It will create a grant with the EPA to assist cities like Philadelphia, those of us with large drinking water systems, to increase resiliency around natural hazards, our cybersecurity, and extreme weather, which we've had across the city, but particularly in areas like Manayunk in the 4th Council District and also Eastwick in the 2nd Councilmanic District. So that would be 50%. Of 50 million of that funding would be reserved to municipalities larger than 100,000 people, which we are here in the city of Philadelphia. So I agree with you, Councilmember O'Neill. There will be lots of opportunity for us to vie for these dollars. The non-federal cost match for some of these opportunities is very low, and something that we should be planning for in Philadelphia so that we can help more constituents more quickly get to CSO. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Chair, I'll close on this. I want to thank Mark Camerata for his explanation, because it's the best explanation I've ever heard for how difficult it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman O'Neill. Any other questions or comments from members of this panel? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210861?
For the first panel of 210861, we have Paula Brumblow-Burns.
I'm Paula Brumblow-Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210861, which was introduced into City Council on October 28th, 2021 by Council President Clark. Bill number 210861 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain portions of land located within an area bounded by Burke Street, Memphis Street, Wilt Street, and Tulip Street, all under certain terms and conditions. The proposed bill will amend the zoning for the site of the former St. Laurentius Church from RM4 residential multifamily to RSA5 residential single-family attached. Previously, bill number 190058 changed the zoning of this property from RSA5 to RM4 in order to facilitate the adaptive reuse of the church. Since that time, the structure has been deemed structurally unstable by the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Demolition was approved by the Philadelphia Historical Commission in April 2020, and a demolition permit was issued on September 30th, 2021. This bill reverts the zoning to the original RSA5 and would match the zoning of the rest of the properties on the block. This bill, as introduced, is consistent with the zoning recommendations of the River Wards District Plan. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210861 at its meeting of November 18th, 2021, and recommended approval. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee for this particular panel? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for this bill 210861?
For panel number 2, we have John Scott, Kevin Brett, and Hal Schirmer. And you may testify in the order in which I called your names.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Just state your name and begin your testimony.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Scott. I am here in support of Bill 210861. I am a longtime resident of Fishtown, an advocate for historic preservation, and a ward leader. This bill restores the zoning at Berks and Memphis to match the surrounding properties. The current RM4 classification allowed the historic St. Laurentius Church to be reused by right. Unfortunately, its owner has finally secured permission to demolish the building, and St. Laurentius will soon be a memory. Arguably, the current RM4 designation is spot zoning, an outlier in a neighborhood of single-family houses. But more importantly, with the pending demolition of the building, there's no reason for this site to remain zoned this way. The RM4 classification doesn't belong there. In effect, this bill eliminates the spot zoning in that section of the neighborhood. Now, I recognize a few things. Some of our vocal neighbors believe that more density is required in Fishtown to solve a global housing crisis. One or two of them even got elected to seats on the neighborhood board with about 80 votes. But Fishtown is a lot bigger than 80 votes, a Facebook group, or a few Zoom meetings. In real life, we see 4,000 to 8,000 people at our polls. And these are people who actually work here, live here, park here, pay taxes here, and vote here. And they are not asking for more density. There may be a case for increasing density somewhere, but it's not in Fishtown with our broken sidewalks, our narrow, trenched up streets, and our limited and aging infrastructure. Fishtown already has about 31,000 people per square mile. It's 3 times denser than Philadelphia overall. It's denser even than the overall densities of New York, Mexico City, and even Beijing. Enough is quite enough. I respectfully ask that you support 210861. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the next witness start your testimony? Say your name for the record.
If Kevin Brett is in the meeting, you may unmute yourself and begin. If not, we can move on to the next individual, which is Hal Schirmer.
Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. My name is Hal, H-A-L, Schirmer, S-C-H-I-R-M-E-R. Just to make dot I's and cross T's, I will swear that I'm telling the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, just in case. I am testifying in support of Bill 210861, which restores RSA 5 zoning in a row house neighborhood. I believe this bill encourages realistic reuse at a neighborhood scale, encourages historic preservation, and removes the unintended incentives that cause the deterioration and demolition by neglect which caused this. I have submitted a PDF with a couple of pictures. Most of them are based on my testimony in 2020 to the Historical Commission when the owner first requested demolition permits. I believe you have that, so it's a quick picture of the exterior, the interior. Most importantly, the second page has the RM4 standards, which are totally out of scale with this entire area. Did put some footnotes in for the Historical Commission that the courts have held that fire insurance and extended coverage covers collapse as well as threat of collapse. That might be important later. In the notes from the Philadelphia City Planning Commission, RM4 standards are really meant for large-scale suburban-style high-rise development. That's what you have around Washington Square, Rittenhouse Square, Parktown Place, and along Ben Franklin Parkway. It is entirely out of scale in a little corner in Fishtown. Going through the other exhibits, at the ZBA hearing, Darcy noted this site would be 5 row homes. The buyer and seller then bumped that up, quadrupled that, or tripled that to 16 apartments, and then the ZBA quintupled that to almost 23 apartments. Finally, February 10, 2019, the court upheld the permits for 23 units. 2 weeks later, the owners were in front of City Council asking to rezone from the 5 units up under RSA 5 to what could be up to 150, 160 units under RM4. Made no sense whatsoever. This bill restores that balance between the lot and the building and the neighborhood's existing density. With regard, I know we hear a lot about how the property is deteriorated. I did want to mention, and it's on page 12, 13, and 14 of what I submitted, January 20, 2016, the seller promised they would not let the property deteriorate. Page 13, the seller said they had fire and extended coverage, which means we are paying for insurance. If something falls off, we have somebody who will put it back in. And finally, the seller stated that they wouldn't sell the property until all the violations were fixed. That never happened. That was one of the reasons why I've been involved in this case, trying to keep the property up for like 6 years. I did want to address some of the flack that we caught as me representing the neighbors and the other neighbors. This wasn't about parking. This was about the fact that the permits were issued by L&I based on blank ZBA paperwork. When we finally went in and got the paperwork, it was literally blank. But moving along, these big spaces, the former churches, at the very bottom of my point, my wife was an intern at the Library of Congress at the Jefferson Building. It is possible to save some of these big churches by dropping in stacked office cubicles and moving along. I did want to thank City Council for also making sure that we have some new bills which have allowed by right reuse of historic buildings in residential areas as offices, as conversions, to speed the process up and to keep more of these old buildings up. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And before we call for members of the committee, I just want to make sure that Brett, is it John Scott or Kevin Brett?
Kevin Brett.
Kevin Brett available? Last call, is Kevin Brett available? Okay, any other questions and comments from members of this committee? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the next panel for bill number 210744?
For bill number 210744, we have Paula Brumblow Burns, Timothy Ryan, and Joe Carson.
I'm Paula Brumblow Burns, Director of Legislation for the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I am here to testify on bill number 210744, which was introduced into City Council on September 23rd, 2021 by Councilmember Heenan. Bill number 210744 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Germania Street, Arundel Avenue, Delaware Avenue, and Linden Avenue. This bill will change the zoning for a set of parcels in the Torresdale neighborhood from RSA2, residential single-family attached, to CMX2, commercial mixed use. The block is primarily in use as a single-family detached homes, with just under half of the Delaware Avenue frontage devoted to a restaurant and bar and its associated parking lot. This use is operating pursuant to a zoning variance that includes a proviso limiting the expansion of its operations. The only portion of this area to be remapped is the restaurant property. This remapping is not reflected in the North Delaware District Plan, and while it would bring the zoning into conformance with the current use, it would also effectively remove any limits on the expansion of that use. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 210744 at its meeting of October 21st, 2021, and did not recommend for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Will the clerk please call the next witness on this panel?
Next, we have Timothy Ryan.
Hi, thank you. My name is Timothy Ryan. I am testifying today to ask for your support of bill number 210744. I am the owner and operator of a restaurant called Maggie's Waterfront Cafe since the date of October 10th, 2019. I am a current resident of this neighborhood. I live currently 2 blocks from the restaurant, and I work every day at my business to ensure the property is maintained well outside and inside, operating efficiently, and I strive on keeping this a non-nuisance bar and family-oriented restaurant. On March 16, 2020, as you all know, COVID struck and devastated our business. Dining inside of our restaurant was temporarily prohibited. We were granted the ability to offer takeout and delivery, and although this allowed me to keep my business partially open and my managers working, the business's revenue decreased by 95%. I was then able to obtain a payroll protection loan and bring back as many of my employees as I possibly could. We were slowly allowed to open our sidewalk cafe, then our indoor eating. But with that also came, as everybody knows, the 80% increase in our business supplies to ensure we remained compliant with all rules and regulations to be open during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we helped support the neighborhood schools through various partner fundraisers, and we continue to support the local community through charitable donations. Our business employs between 80 and 100 people throughout the year. The majority of our employees are single mothers trying to provide for their children, put themselves through school, or pay their mortgage. We also employ young adults trying to put themselves through college, and our seasonal employees are college students that live at school during their fall, winter months. We give many teenagers from this community their first job, and we're happy to say so. Our business generates a lot of revenue on all levels, with the taxes we pay in federal employee taxes, state sales tax, real estate taxes for 3 parcels of land, Philadelphia's liquor tax and sugar tax, to name the big ones. Being rezoned to CMX2 from RSA2 would increase my tax burden, but it is the price I'm willing to pay for the land to be properly zoned. 2 years ago, I attended a meeting downtown to inquire on what I could do with this property and what I couldn't do with this property at the Office of Licenses and Inspections. In asking for advisement, I was told to seek the CMX2 rezoning of the property due to its large size, and COVID struck, and so now we're here at that point. I spoke to the neighbors that live closest to this property. Of the 7 closest houses to this property, I have 6 signatures in approval for the rezoning. We sent them to our councilman this morning. They realized the positive impact it will have on the business and the community. Recouping the losses from 2020, I will be able to employ more members of the community if we are rezoned on all levels. My tax rate will increase, which will generate more revenue for the state and city. Being able to utilize certain unused areas of property on this parcel would allow us to generate at least 25% more in revenues, which may offset the rising cost of goods resulting from the pandemic and will allow me to employ more people in this community. Thank you again for hearing my testimony. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Is Joe Carson available? I know he's having some technical difficulties. So what I'm going to do is we are going to go into, well, first, any questions and comments from members of this committee?
Mr. Chair?
Councilwoman Kathleen Gilmore Richardson.
Yes. So I wanted to thank everyone for their testimony. I reviewed this legislation based on some communication we've received, including the existing zoning versus the proposed zoning. So I just had a question for the owner, is that for this area that would go from the RSA2 to CMX2, is it just the area of the restaurant?
Yes, it's just from what I believe, it is just the area of the restaurant. There is an area on the side of the building which in past, due to zoning, there was conflict on what we could and could not do with it, and that's why I had I sought out the meeting with the then Commissioner of License and Inspections, and he advised me on how to maybe be able to use that property, which I haven't touched since the day I've taken over. It's just been desolate, but I really didn't know what I could or could not do with it.
Okay, and then based on the communication we received and some of the concerns of the community members, if you could just, for the record, you stated that are you a new owner? Did you own this property in 2017?
I did not.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. I see that Mr. Joe Carson is now on. Mr. Carson, please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. My name is Joseph Carson. I am the president of East Torresdale Civic Association.
You can begin, Joe.
Okay, thank you. I guess at the end of the day, we at the East Torresdale Civic Association oppose any further changes to the zoning associated with this property. We have had an issue with this property, not the current business, because the ownership has changed. But the business, the property is owned by not Tim Ryan, who I think just spoke. He's in the midst of trying to purchase it. My understanding is that we want to change this to a commercial zone. We in the community would prefer that if this business failed, it would go back to a residential community. It was once a small bar. It has grown inordinately. It has affected in our neighborhood adversely in the past. We have dealt with patrons who are unruly in our neighborhood and have not behaved as people recently have behaved. I myself personally have been assaulted by a patron from Maggie's back in 2017, just to give you a frame of mind for the dates. And we at the East Tarrsdale Civic Association have been through inordinate levels of zoning hearings, court hearings. This has been adjudicated in the Commonwealth of the state of Pennsylvania into what it is in its current state. We advocate that we continue to keep the business as it is today in its current zoning. So we strongly hope that the council sees through this change in zoning as an end around to what has been adjudicated. East Tarrsdale Civic Association has spent northwards of $19,500 of our hard-earned monies trying to make sure that we keep this business growth in check, or at least at a reasonable pace that doesn't adversely affect the community. So that's really the nutshell. I want you to look at what we've done, what we've spent, what the history is, what has been transpired in the past, and look at that history and understand what this is in its context. And I encourage you guys to see what that is and act accordingly in the best interest of our community.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments of members of this committee? If there's no questions and comments of members of this committee, I would like to now go into public comments and give everyone an opportunity to be logged on. Give us a second while the tech team connect public comment.
Please leave an historical message.
Modesto, if you can just let me know when all of the witnesses for public comment are logged on.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we're just going to need a short break just to get the public participants queued in. Mr. Chair, we are now live.
Will the clerk please call the first witness for public comment?
First, we have Mark Zachary.
Yes, hello?
Go ahead, Mark. Just say your first and last name
Thank
and begin
you.
your testimony.
Mark Zachary, and I'm testifying on 3 bills today. The first one is 210863. That's the rezoning by Councilperson Quinones Sanchez. I'm a near neighbor of this area, and I applaud her work on this bill and the community. I think it's a great thing. I just kind of wanted to add that this bill is a direct recognition that increased density provides for more affordability. That is kind of the implicit recognition contained within this bill, even though nobody's saying that. So I kind of have issues with, and I love that, but I think that there was other rezonings recently, like for example the downzoning, Front Street from Diamond to Lehigh, unbelievable to hell. It just, to me, that goes against several of the goals of the city. And I wish that people would speak more that density can lead more affordability. We need more density in this city. So that would be my comment on that bill. And then there's Councilperson O'Neill's bill, 210865. This is exactly the opposite of what the city needs. I don't live in that area. I'm a near neighbor more of the West Kensington area, but this is exclusionary zoning at its finest. This is saying that we don't want people of a certain class. We don't want any more dense areas being built in the far northeast. We want it to remain exactly the same for the people that live there right now. And that is not good for the future of the city. That is very short-sighted. It may be what a few vocal people are asking their councilperson to do, but they are wrong. And the councilperson should have the strength to stand up and say, this is what we actually should do in our city to move forward into the future. So, and for all, I know everyone on the council is just going to be like, yeah, we're going to support this bill because this other guy won't support me if I want to put my bill forward. And that's really kind of the crux of the issue in my mind. That's the problem. The other bill is 210861. That is the extremely unfortunate tale of the St. Laurentius Church. I'm also a near neighbor of there. And to me, it's a travesty, a tragedy, and near a comedy that this bill is being put forward to reduce density in an area that's 3 minutes walk to the bus station. It's a very expensive area. These houses are going to be built single family. It'll be $1 million houses. Plus, well, congratulations to the members of the community, the esteemed members of the community that fought this in the ZBA and filed suit years ago. Congratulations, you had money to hire a lawyer. And congratulations to the city council person, where I'm sure his goals of affordability in the Fishtown area are served greatly by downzoning this and making the area right next to transit left end. So I guess that's a big win for the council person, Clark. So congratulations to him on that big affordability win for Fishtown. And again, this is a few neighbors who say, oh, we don't want anything more dense on that area. Well, congratulations, you got a church knocked down to 140 years old. It's a tragedy. It should have been multifamily from the get-go to allow this redevelopment to go forward. We should have already been having the street open and people living in a subdivided, restored, preserved church. So thank you. The council should push for more density, which equals more affordability. The zoning heights underneath the L should have never been downzoned. As a matter of fact, they should be CMX4. Or if people really have vision, underneath the L should be CMX5. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Will the clerk please call the next individual for public comment, please?
Next individual is Maria Gonzalez.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just state your name for the record. Begin your public comment testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman and also members of City Council. My name is Maria Gonzalez. I am a resident of the East Torresdale neighborhood. I'm here to testify on my opposition to Bill number 210744 for the rezoning of certain areas of land bounded by Germania, Arundel, Delaware, and Linden Avenue from RSA 2 to CMX 2. The proposed rezoning will only benefit Maggie's Restaurant. Our community has opposed the expansion of this business as it is located in a heavily residential neighborhood. Maggie's is the only commercial business in our area. Rezoning this parcel of land to commercial will exclude the voices from residents on future land development.
Excuse me 1 second, Ms. Gonzalez. And everyone who's on this call, please put your phone on mute, please.
Members of City Council, my name is Maria Gonzalez.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to testify my opposition to Bill number 210744 for the rezoning of certain areas of land bounded by Germania, Arundel, Delaware, and Linden Avenue from RSA 2 to CMX 2. The proposed rezoning will only benefit Maggie's Restaurant. Our community has opposed the expansion of this business as it is located in a heavily residential neighborhood. Maggie's is the only commercial business in the area. Rezoning this parcel of land to commercial will exclude voices from the residents on future land development decisions in their community and be adversely affected by the activities of this business from the proposed commercial expansion plans expressed by the owner. We have seen the negative effects since this business was allowed to expand through the addition of the second floor in 2015. Since the expansion of this restaurant, we have seen increased traffic in the area. With increased seating, we see more vehicular traffic to this residential community. During special events, which are many during the summer months, patrons take up all the parking along Delaware Avenue, Arundel, Germania, and they do not respect traffic laws, lawns, or driveways. As documented in the district plan, there are numerous safety barriers, including heavy traffic volumes, vehicles parking too close to intersections, impacting pedestrian sightlines of traffic, and speeding limits not being followed. The proposed zoning does not fit within the character of this community and will serve to allow for future expansion of this establishment and development of additional commercial space and exacerbate the pre-existing safety concerns. Based on the district plan, recommendations for land use for this area is residential development in character with the existing medium-density housing stock. Over the last 7 years, I have seen firsthand how the owner of this establishment continues to completely disregard all building and zoning codes. This business constructed a beer garden, expanded its kitchen on the second floor, and built a shed without having the proper zoning in place and building permits. And I point this out because residents of this community are very much concerned how zoning change to CMX2 will grant the owner full discretion and remove all guardrails for expanding of his business into a catering hall, attracting hundreds of people to our small neighborhood, with a total disregard on how it impacts the quality of life for our families of this community. I am strongly opposed to this rezoning and hope that the committee can see how this will impact long-term our community. And I fully understand the effects of the pandemic as it affects all businesses throughout the city, and it affects every facet of our lives. But residents of East Torresdale have the right to have a voice in zoning matters that affects the quality of life for their families. This bill will completely revoke our rights as it relates to commercial development and permit one entity to control the future of our neighborhood. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your public testimony. Anyone else here who has not been called for a public comment?
Mr. Chair, we have one more individual, Oscar Basart. And if individuals in public comment, if you are watching the hearing via channel 64 or online, please mute that as it can cause delays. We have Oscar Basart.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Oscar. You can begin your testimony.
Hi, Oscar Beiser, Keeping Society of Philadelphia, a preservation nonprofit here in the city. I am testifying in favor of Bill number 210861 to downzone the parcel associated with the landmark St. Laurentius Roman Catholic Church. Demolition of this building is a tragedy for the community and the descendants of the working class Polish immigrants that invested their limited resources in creating this parish building. This building represents their past dreams and aspirations of that community. In order to possibly see this building saved, the downzoning will limit options for the parcel's development. As some of you may know, I served on the Mayor's Historic Preservation Task Force, and one of the measures that was passed as a result of that in order to help save churches is that they would be able to automatically put in multi-unit in an existing church if it is designated and listed on the Philadelphia Register of Historic Places. Since this building is protected on the Philadelphia Register, the downzoning would leave reusing the building as the only option for density at this parcel. And this action would potentially necessitate the reuse of the building and save this important landmark for our city and for the Fishtown neighborhood. With only 2.2% of our buildings protected as historic, we must do everything possible to save those landmarks that are listed and protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your public comment testimony. Any other questions and any other individuals available for public comment? Hearing none, this concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into the public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bills before this committee today. We will now convene the public meeting. If you have participated in public comment, you can please disconnect from the call. Will the clerk please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that they are present when their names are called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. And we are now convening the public meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Sorry.
Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, colleagues, and listeners. I am present.
Councilmember David O. Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I'm present.
And Councilmember Mark Squilla.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues, present.
Thank you very much, Brett. We are now officially in our public meeting. And now the chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210683.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210683 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, who seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210683 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210686.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer an amendment to bill number 210686. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210686 be approved.
Second.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson that seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210686 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210686 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210686 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair recognizes for the record that Councilman O'Neill seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210686 as amended be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210869.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210869 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman O'Neill seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210869 be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation. Further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on bill number 210863.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer an amendment to bill number 210863. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move for the amendment to bill number 210863 be approved.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210863 be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210865.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210. Well, I think we're doing the 210863 as amended, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes, I apologize. Let me go back. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210863 be reported from this committee with favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended at the next session of council. Let's do that again. All signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Now, let me go down, Mark. On my script, Mark, I have amendment to bill number 210865. That's not correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That one was, we passed the bill for 863 as amended.
Yeah.
Right? And now we're in 865.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210865.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer an amendment to bill number 210865. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210865 be approved.
Second.
The chair recognizes, for the record, Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to Bill number 210865 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on Bill number 210865 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 210865 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 210865 as amended be reported from this committee with the favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on Bill number 210689.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210689 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 210689 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on Bill number. One second. On Bill number 210771.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210771 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion, and has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 210771 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on Bill number 210861.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 210861 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilman Catherine Gilmore Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 210861 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The chair recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on Bill number 210744.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill number Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I move the bill number 210744 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilwoman Kathleen Gilmer Richardson seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 210744 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. If there are no additional remarks, this concludes the business before the Committee on Rules today. I want to thank all our members for their participation in the hearing today, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you very much.
Happy Thanksgiving all. Take care.
Enjoy your holiday if I don't see you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Mr.
Thanksgiving.
Chair.
job, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.